Hello there folks, SeKo Starcraft here, bringing you an amateur replay. We got Asmodis, sure, down here, the bottom center up against SandTox, the zerg. This is a silver versus gold matchup, sent in by a different viewee here. I don't know exactly what his name is. ID was Wally, and he's from Argentina, so hopefully he sees this when it goes up there. I'll send him a note. And I always find it really interesting when people want to send me their replays, particularly as a lot of the times it's not like nearby. It's, you know, people talking, oh, I'm from Germany, I love that you cast one of my videos, or hey, you know, I'm from halfway around the world, check out some of my StarCraft. And I actually really love that a lot. It's being an amateur side replay. It's not going to have, I'm expecting the pro level stuff some people might be used to. Come back here, mouse. But I expect some intense play, and I love watching the amateur people go at it because there's so many opportunities for them to learn. I do like spending a bit of time going through their replays and helping them out. I'm having a really bad hybrid of crappy tequila and apple juice right now. It sounds horrid, but somehow it worked out, and I feel very happy that I managed to pull that off. We're having a worker brawl. Multiple worker brawl? This is really interesting. The interesting thing about this is he can deny buildings going down. He's going to force a lot of mining time loss. I've considered mixing this in with my builds a little bit, not just because it's funny, but also because you have this opportunity to just screw up people's plans. We can see the protoss really starting to bank cash right now, and I don't know if he really knows what to do about this kind of situation. You got to get that gateway down as soon as possible. Protoss happily aren't like Zerg, and they have a little bit more difficulty with that. He didn't get the wall off there. What I'm sure Asmodis is really worried about, though I think he's scouted this, I think he was very worried that these two drones were essentially just buying a gap for zerglings to come across as part of like a 6 pool, which is generally when I pull early drones. But we can see right now that the Protoss took a pretty big hit in income for a while just because he was down on workers and he lost a bunch of mining time bouncing back and forth. These drones are actually potentially going to kill this pylon. That's really funny to me, because that takes so long to do. And there's nothing the probes can do about it. They're on the other side of the wall. Over on this side, the pool is going down, gas is being taken right away. So it's got to be some sort of pressure coming in here pretty quick. Would like to see that cybernetics score go down here pretty fast. I don't know if he is going to try to wall these drones off again or whatever, but he's got enough minerals to start doing something. Only a couple of lings being made right now, so I think this is just a fantastic fake out by the Zerg player. Zealot will come out and shut this down. Hopefully SandTox doesn't lose his workers because of that. Gas is finished but not being taken. And this was something I used to do a lot when I was playing against some of my friends that were just getting into StarCraft and weren't as comfortable with it yet. You send down a couple of workers or something early on just to throw people out of their comfort zone, and it's incredible how quickly that can start paying dividends. Unfortunately for a Zerg player, he's a little bit behind his economy. Should be throwing down a hatch or something here pretty soon. Now, a couple drones and a couple Zerglings will not take out a Zealot. So all that work that SandTox essentially did with this Zealot was for nothing. Like he lost 2 drones and those lings, is behind on his hatch, and isn't really going to have anything incredible to show for it. Yeah, a few more lings coming out with speed, but it's not going to do him a ton of good just yet. Good scout from Asmodis here. I like this. If you don't know really what's going on, sometimes you can just sneak a worker across the map and see what's going on. Sometimes as a Zerg player, you don't really want to suffer and let the Protoss player get too comfortable and far ahead, so we see that SandTox is just doing everything he can to be a bit of a bugger. Maybe Asmodis is just a little bit too worried about this being an all-in, but with these 2 Zealots here, he should be just fine to deal with a lot of Zerglings that are coming across, as long as they don't get pulled off the wall. We see the dance. Now there's 3 Zealots out. The Zergling pressure is essentially done for the time being. Still more Zerglings coming across the map though. He could get a surround on those Zealots, but it'll be very cost ineffective. Almost guaranteed. Sometimes if you're moving down this first queen, it's nice to drop a creep tumor on the way, because you've got this energy you can't really spend just yet anyways. Drinking crappy tequila out of a glass boot I got for Olympics for drinking beer. This might just turn into the most delayed 4-gate of all time. Now you gotta be very careful when the sentry comes out. It could actually force field all the lings up at the top. So if you're bouncing around, don't bounce around with all of your lings to go and scale the top. Just use a couple. Otherwise you could risk, unfortunately, getting cut off and losing a lot of things. I do like this third hatch going down. He knows exactly what's happening. 14 drones though. He's just finally starting to drone up again now. That's the problem with all these lings. They're not paying dividends. Is that he's pretty far behind in economy. Happily for him, his protoss opponent has got all this chrono boost he can be making more workers with. It has not. So it is going to be the most unremarkable 4-gate. Warp gate research is finished at least. So it's more up to the Zerg player now to scout, and that's why I think it's important to try to keep a couple of lings bouncing around to see what's coming over, or at least sack an overlord. There's one over here. Sacking it to come in and see what's going on is nice, but the fact that he's going to see this Nexus go down should tell him essentially where he's at in this game. One Spore Crawler going down. I don't mind that. I mean, you could be worried about an Oracle play. Even, like, one Oracle, I believe, takes out a Queen straight up, so depending on the amount of energy if you don't run out of energy. So getting that Spore Crawler is a nice, safe thing. That's the problem of not having vision. Sometimes it's difficult. He actually gets the cancel on that Nexus. I'm actually rather surprised about that. Will get himself a free Zealot. Free lunch. Still droning up at home, but he's got a ton of money he needs to spend. He's making more queens now. 3 more queens. Lots and lots of queens. It's in these moments where you've got to have those hotkeys really working well and start pumping out tons and tons and tons of drones. You, as a Zerg player, what you really want to do, if you had every opportunity in the world, is to just drone uncontested. He's going to try and pick off that sentry, but I don't know if it's worth it. He loses all of his map control. He loses all of the vision he had other than this one Overlord. Nexus is still denied. Double Stargate. That's weird. And this is something, as a Zerg player, you've got to get used to sending over some Overlords to park them near the base. Start running them in. Just to be able to see this. Because if you scout this going down, good. You're going to deal with it no problem. Zerglings get a probe. You know, why not? Mothership Core is doing a good job of scouting. This isn't enough lings to break these Zealots. Like, it's just not. At this point, you really gotta just fall back and try to get that huge economy up. Right now, there's 33 workers for the Zerg player. He probably could be at 50 or 60 right now if he wasn't making the Zerglings. And then he could make anything he wanted. He could be on Roach Tech right now, and if he made 12 Roaches moved across the map, he would just win. Until these Stargates really get up and get going. Nice little run by. Should we get a little bit of punishment in? Or he's going to go to pylons. I would go straight for the probes. You're not going to be able to get that pylon. No. Going for the probes, just... You want to get guaranteed damage, I'd call it. And sometimes with those run-bys with a very small amount of Zerglings, the guaranteed damage you can get is workers. Still, double the worker supply for the Zerg player. Overlords. Heading out across the map, sometimes you gotta be worried about rallies. You don't really want those out too far. Spore Crawlers going down. He saw the double Stargates when he ran into the base, so I'm sure he's a little concerned about things happening. But static defenses aren't necessarily the answer. What's gonna be more effective is likely a Hydralisk Den, because even if there was, say, 4 Void Rays out, they could either kill these Spore Crawlers, or they could just move around them. Phoenixes will just move around them. You really want some sort of mobile attack that's gonna be able to keep you safe. And that's why I see a lot of times pro players, once you see, you know, more than 2 or 3 Phoenixes out, you're going to need Hydras to deal with them. It's the only thing that's going to move fast enough and do enough damage quickly to shut it down. Double skill ray production. Finally starting to get a couple more probes being made here off both Nexuses. So he's actually going to drone up pretty quick probe up. Whereas there's a good number of drones right now for our Zerg player. You really want to get up to that like 60, 70 mark at least. Get the creep between the bases. Get your tech moving. Spire tech and infestation tech. Why not? And if you have a good army, you don't need the static defenses in the early game. In the late game, when you're using your army to go and pressure, you'll want these things down. But at this stage, you're more likely going to want a Roach Warren and a Hydralisk Den, and you can have Roaches and Hydras that can move around and defend, as opposed to investing the drones that you need to get you money, and the money to build these into static defenses. I do like SandTox's just love of expanding. Even if you lose one or two of these, it's going to pay for itself if you can really drone them up and just take the whole map. And when you've got this kind of opportunity with this kind of lead, you can do that. But you'll notice that the protoss player is really closing in on supply really quickly here. And there's not a huge bank for a zerg player. Workers wise, still a little bit below where he wants to be. And it's easy enough to check. One, always look for that little icon on the left hand side of the screen to see if you got idle workers. Two, just give a swipe of your mineral line. If you can't fill up like an entire page almost with just a swipe of your mineral line, like this one for instance, way oversaturated, what you want to do is pull a bunch of those down here, put them in place. Trying to get out some air units here. It's going to take him a bit of time though, unfortunately. He doesn't have that bank that you generally want to try and move that. The queens, what I would like to see out of Zerg players in this position is get all of your queens hotkeyed. You've got 5 or 6 queens together. They can take on these void rays. Right? You got the transfusions. You've got everything else. You know, just fight those units. The Protoss player has been pinned in his base the whole time. Now he actually has an army. The Zerg player really doesn't. Just right now making 30 lings. He's got a couple infestors and not much else to really deal with this right now. That fungal's 2 huge fungal whiffs and now they're out of energy. He does have burrow. If you've used up your infestor energy, just burrow them. You want to keep those alive if at all possible. Lots of spore crawlers. And once again, you do want those active units. The Hydras and the Corruptors, when they're out, will be able to do pretty good. But until that time comes, this overinvestment in static defenses might not pay off. So we lost 2 hatches so far. Protoss player, still not that great in the overall worker supply. Got pretty big supply block coming up, I guess. No, he's not. I don't know if he's trying to wall with those or anything. This is pretty unfortunate. That's why having a mothership core... He has a mothership core, doesn't he? Yes, he does. Photon overcharge. I was about to say, there's that bugger. But at this point, this Nexus will just get killed. Void Ray's going over here, take care of that. Their hatchery. Wall off is finished up here, but there's nothing really... Oh, there's a Void Ray out. Should keep him alive long enough, I suppose. So it's at these points, like, you can't win with just these zerglings. If you want to go for a mass air zerg army, get yourself a sick economy. Like, get your economy up really sick. You want 3 fully saturated bases at least. And then from there, it's so easy to start pumping out all the Hydras. We can see that there's a big bank right now for the Zerg player. There, now he spends it. And he's actually got a lot of larvae left over as well that he could be using. Looked like he wanted to kill his own pylon off there, just so he can get out. Upgrades on the way. A little bit delayed. 1-1 upgrade when there's... I don't think there's even a Roach Warren or a Hydralisk Den down right now. Once again, way oversaturated on these pieces here. I'll talk a little bit about the hotkeys for Zerg players as well, because I think that's something that would help out a lot in this situation. All of your queens, I almost always have all my queens on one hotkey. It's usually 5, all my hatcheries on number 4. What that means is it's very easy for me to go to my different bases using the mini-map. I can click on there, click number 5 and inject, V, inject, and hit all these bases really, really quickly. And then once I have a ton of larvae like this, I can send them to the front and start moving mass creep. Take all the queens at once and just drop huge piles of creep everywhere. You want all of your hatcheries hotkeyed, which he does, but I generally like my hatcheries on number 4 because 1, 2, and 3 are really great to have for your army. All of his Mutalisks right now are on a hotkey, which is great, but ultimately you do want to keep where your fingers are easiest to click, which is number 1, 2, and 3, so he can go and take care of those kinds of units. And I think once you get used to that kind of hotkey and macro style, you get very used to being able to go like number 4 for my hatcheries, spawn, pick up all my larvae, drone, hold that down and make 15 drones, and get a base really, really saturated up. I do like that he's got like the reveal on this thing because he doesn't have any. This doesn't really shoot up. The mutas look like they will just get cleaned up here barely, but that's so many infested Terrans, they'll be able to do a lot of damage here. Save the mutas. If you got mutas in small numbers, the only thing you really should be using for is harassing probes. Other than that, save them. Against a Protoss player, you need the higher numbers to be able to just take on protoss units head on. Like that he's using the burrow now on the infestors. Keep them alive, keep them happy. And there's the GG from Asmodis. So a fun, aggressive game out of SandTox. I love seeing amateur people that are aggressive and comfortable to do that. But the other things I would encourage is keeping track of your bases to make sure your economy is well done. Getting your injects on hotkeys. At a pro level, you can generally deal with just hotkeys on areas and clicking on that. And then making sure that you have the right unit composition. Because roaches, for instance, roaches and hydras would have finished this game 10 minutes ago. But, anyways, great game from SandTox. SeKo Starcraft, thanks there for Wally for sending that in all the way from Argentina. And we'll talk with everybody later.